go. I think I wanted to check to see how the moonshine's coming. And we're not real far from it, so it's a short hop. And we'll help Siobhan kind of check in with her partner. And see what we have on that front while we're hanging out. Let me pop over here. And so I've got a couple of things I put together in the background while we're playing. But yeah, this is a young lady I named Siobhan. And by way of introduction, this is Colonel Darling. And so for backstory on her, I was doing some digging around. And I like the idea of her being a runaway from New York. Now, the year that this is all taking place is 1899, which is a weird year because it gets us well into the sunset of the cowboy era. This is that block of time when the Wild West is rapidly becoming tame. The trains are coming out. The people are moving out and settling down. They're building more permanent settlements. And so there's a little bit of like, how do I get her out here as part of that storyline? And so one idea I had was maybe she might still be a first-generation American, but she was a runaway. So that led me down the road to do a little bit of digging into that backstory. I'm going to put that on pause for a second, do some game work. We'll talk a little bit about where that family came into all of this.
We shouldn't sit on this too long.
Let's see what she's got going on. I can do a bootlegger mission. Blood is thicker than shine. Maybe I should look into those. I'd like to hire a band for the bar at some point. Let's see if we got moonshine ready to move. Now that I'm using my improved recipe. And I've upgraded my still. Let's see here. What we got here?
I have some ideas.
And we are still cooking. Making that evergreen moonshine of average strength. Let's see. 35% complete. So we've got about 40 minutes till that's done. So, excuse me, may as well leave that for a while. And come back to something else, although while we're here. Popping in, it's a decent crowd tonight. It's a good thing I upgraded to the medium grade stuff, because, that's what we got. And let's see, have a quick drink and we'll head back out. Because there doesn't appear to be a lot of downsides to it, but there we go. A couple of good upsides. So we'll head back to camp and see if Cripps has got a job for us.
By the way, I see we have some
It's fresh customers. Yeah, well, we've upgraded to the medium stuff. People are gonna come. We're not selling that watered down crap anymore. We're actually getting things out on time. All right, so a new waypoint. Go see what we got going on. Let's see. Back to camp. All right. Where's the colonel? He ran off again. All right, here we go. So, as I was saying, let's see what I got. Let's see what's next in my notes. Okay, so why would she be leaving New York? And this is something I came across while I was digging around. This is actually an engraving from 1885. And one of the things that happened in New York City is because there was so much poverty in sections of the town that was so rampant and ill managed, it became well, okay, so in the modern era we have what's referred to as what's the name, ruin porn, I think is the term they use, where you go out and you take pictures of buildings that are crumbling and collapsing, and it's considered really avant-garde to go out there, maybe even like rock climbing through it and stuff, like these ruins of things that are only 50 years old. Okay, so in the late 19th century, there was a similar pattern in New York where wealthy people would take tours of the ghettos and the lower class boroughs in order to just see how the other half lived. Um, and so this engraving was created in 1885, and it shows, according to the caption I found for it, middle class tourists routinely visiting an Irish slum of 5 Points with police escort, because you didn't. I mean, these were slums. You definitely didn't go down there if you had money and you know, and you were full of yourself enough to think it might be fun to go tour the slums. And so there was, despite the amount of money in New York at the time and the amount of wealth in there, it was not equitably distributed, shall we say. And so a lot of immigrants really found themselves living hand to mouth, hand to mouth. So part of my vision for Siobhan here is that she's growing up in this. So one of her coming of age moments is the realization that there's maybe a girl a lot like her in a much nicer dress with much greater opportunities who's staring at her as a safari creature, the same way that perhaps someone might look at a hyena on the Serengeti, or take a trip to Kenya to watch the lions. And I can see that as being the kind of part of that informing decision to get out of New York and try to find a better life for herself. So, and what's interesting too, doing a little more research, I came across this. Now, this is from Department of Homeland Security. Has a yearbook of immigration status. Ooh, hold on. Hold that thought. Oh, wow, that's a lot of deer. That's a lot of deer. And come on, stay with them. Stay with them. I got close enough to camp that my horse hit the brakes. And now I can't control my horse. I hate that. If you get just close enough to your camp, your horse slows to a crawl so you don't accidentally run over anybody. I don't want to ride that close to a cliff. Oh, thank you. I'm going to get this one here. I'm going to get this one. Maybe. All right, as long as she doesn't turn suddenly. What? Now I've lost her. Now I lost her. Gosh darn it. I had her. You saw it. I had her. Twice. I just should hit the brakes. I don't perform well under pressure. That's what I'm blaming. That's what I'm blaming. So anyway, as I was saying, yeah. So as I was saying though, this graph shows immigration from Ireland in particular over the decades. At the bottom, it starts us off in 1820, and then at the far end of the graph takes us to 2008. So you can see right there in 1830 it starts to rise, and that peak is 1850 to 1859. So if we take Siobhan as 19 in the year of this game, she would have been born in 1880, which would have made sense that her family, her parents, would have been in that spike wave of Irish immigrants that came in right on the leading cusp of the Civil War, which also perfectly corresponds to the back end of the potato famine in Ireland. So you would get a lot of men and women on the frontier in this time period that were first generation Americans, but would identify as Irish because there was still that strong cultural heritage, but at the same time aren't really Americans either, because again, if we go back a slide, this was the life they came into. They left one abject poverty for another abject poverty, and the only difference is this abject poverty had people who spoke different languages with different accents. So you have a very different experience there. Okay, so let's put the history lesson on pause for a second here. Let's get something going on now. Get some cash in the pocket. Materials are low. Production's doing well, and we've got a full wagon ready to rock and roll. All right, let's see if I can make up for
Good
previous
news, we have another
oopses
batch ready for
and
market.
and
Buyers
actually
are lined
pull
up
off
not
something
too far from here, so
meaningful
all you
here.
have to do is head over and make the sale. I just keep surprising myself.
Not
And to
embarrass
think
myself
my
too
pa said I'd be
terribly
a
while we're
drunken
out here
hobo
riding
my
around.
whole life.
So, anyway. So we load into this, and then we'll see what we got. Nice full wagon. I gotta get to the road. All right, let's get the sucker to the road, and once we're on the road again, I'll pop some more slides up there. Got 15 minutes to deliver this, so that's nice casual ride. We're riding all the way to Blackwater, which is good. Blackwater is a nice. I like Blackwater as a base of operations for multiple reasons. Okay, let's do the trick here for a second, so I can put that slide back up. Since we've got a nice long ride ahead of us. Steady on, boy. Going down these hills is always fun. So let's see here. So, as I was saying about the immigration, one of the things that was happening, that we should remember with the Irish coming into America, is they were fleeing that abject poverty back in the home country. In fact, in a period of about 20 years, the population of Ireland as an island was cut to almost 25% of its original number. A quarter of that were deaths associated with disease and starvation, and the other half of that drop is attributed to emigration, people just simply leaving. And this would, of course, have profound effects on the Irish economy for generations to follow that. And as part of Irish tradition holds, these losses were not their fault. They were absolutely the fault of the English and oppressive tax regimes. Now, I'm not an economist or an economic historian, and I don't dare try to delve into that. But I will say that if you talk to any Irish folk musician, they all tell you the same thing, and that there's only like 3 kinds of Irish music. There's Irish music about pretty girls, Irish music about going to America and never knowing what happiness is again, and then there's music about hating the English. So, whether or not it's fair, it is definitely a universal attitude. And so what would happen, and there are several documented cases of this, former slave ships were used to help bring Irish immigrants into the United States. Now, this is in no way meant to draw any kind of a parallel between the experiences, because, again, these were, the Irish were adults who were in some ways opting into the system. They could have stayed, they could have faced privation, they could have found a way to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. They did make, on some level, a choice, which is an absolute difference than what happened during the African slave trade. So my comment there is not meant in any way to interpret that as that the Irish were slaves too, because that's a whole different political football I would prefer not to pick up and run with. But that said, they were packed in these gross conditions, and this particular engraving was published in the London News in, looks like, March 1849, and was seen as part of those efforts to, in some ways, fix the Irish problem by moving the Irish out of their country and into a better country, and where better to send them than America, the land of opportunity. Okay, I'm going to have to drive a little bit here, so I can't quite look as closely. You know, look at these. Okay, like about 2 minutes ago, I couldn't find a decent deer to save my life. And I had that one that was just like way out riding me. Now they're stinking everywhere. That feels profoundly unfair. Okay, let's see here. Yeah, here's the quote from Charles E. Tavlerin, the British civil servant, who felt it unnecessary to provide relief efforts to Ireland during the famine. The judgment of God has sent the calamity to teach the Irish a lesson, and that calamity must not be too much mitigated. So, Maybe my earlier comments about hating the English weren't completely off base, because there's some pretty ugly history here. Of course, that said, things aren't exactly looking all that great when they come over. This particular circular that's up on the screen now, this is from an American newspaper called the American Citizen. And I'm not sure how much you can read there with the quality, but there's a lot of very anti-immigrant sentiment written into this, directed at the Irish. And in particular, above and beyond just Irish, against Catholics. Much of North of America was settled by Protestants, and because the Catholics professed a loyalty to the Pope, they were particularly disliked. And they were seen as disloyal Americans, because they would always have that split loyalty between the church and the country. And so what happened during this turn of the century, this is attributed to the Know Nothing Party, which is the party that Millard Fillmore ran for president a second time as part of. Now, they got the name because they knew what they were up to wasn't good. So whenever someone would ask what was up with a party meeting, their answer would be, I know nothing of that. And that would then lead to the concept of the Know Nothing Party, because these were all these people that you knew were meeting. They were talking politics, but they would always claim to know nothing of which you spoke. And so this is a clip from one of those articles therein related. Let me get through this cavern. I can read some more of my notes out to you. Okay, a little air is good. A little air is good, right? I mean, to be fair, this game is made by the same people who made GTA, and, you know, there's got to be an achievement for airtime in a wagon somewhere, right? Oh, long drive. Okay, I'm gonna do the down the barrels cheat here. There we go. Let's check my notes here. And this is from, did I link? I don't have a link. This is from history.com. That's also where I pulled this graphic. That's going to kind of goes to the 13th president. Fearful changes brought about by the Great Hunger refugees. He blamed foreign Catholics for his defeat in the 1844 New York gubernatorial election. Does that sound familiar at all? And what's important, I think, to note here is he ran for president again, and he was running. He came in third. Buchanan won. So this is the election that gets us James Buchanan, who was presided over the attack on Fort Sumter and the start of the Civil War, which Lincoln then steps into. And another gentleman, John C. Fremont, but Fillmore managed to get 20% of the vote, and that means 1 in 5. There we go, pull that in. So 1 in 5 people were on board with electing someone who literally ran in an anti-foreign Catholic platform. I mean, we can't talk about modern politics where we joke that they're saying the quiet part out loud. This guy literally said the quiet part out loud and thought it was supposed to be the out loud part, and he still got 20% of the vote in 1856. And that's only, remember, we're talking, the game is set in 1899, so we're only talking 40 years removed from this. So a lot of some not great stuff happening. And it kind of helps recognize how it was that things like this were part of the day-to-day culture that Siobhan here would have grown up into. Yeah, we're still talking about you. Okay, so now that I'm in town, let me take a little breather here from the slide and pop that off, and let's find some more action to get into here, and we'll get back to talking history. I'm going to actually pop to a different window really quick to see if there's something important I should be aware of. That looks good, that looks good. And then I want to pop over here real quick. And see if there's anything here I should be paying attention to. And everything looks good. Alright, so we're back at it. Alright, so what kind of mischief should we get into, you think? We're here in town. Oh, he's got everything delivered. Got some money in the pocket. I got at least 45 minutes until that mash comes up. Or that gin's finished cooking. I'm thinking either we grab a bounty, which I'm at doing solo, or I should just go hit the plains and see what we find, and then eventually get back to Crypts to load up the business with. I'm thinking the hunting. I'm feeling a little more low-key this evening, if you will. I think I'm still shaking off that ugly mess that allegedly passed for my for clearing out those revenue agents, because that was really embarrassing. That is definitely not a highlight I will repost later. Definitely not. So, all right, so I'll pop in here real quick. Grab those canned goods I wanted to make sure I had. Nod at Bobby.
You gonna keep barking, or you gonna bite? Oh my!
Duck in here. Collect up my deliveries. There we go. There's those apricots, peaches, and strawberries. I think it was the strawberries I needed. I really don't remember exactly what it was I had to pick up. But, nah. We'll see. Alright, yeah, I'm having a long day too, my man. Very long day. Now, I could see what Hector has for me.
Your handling of that last
Let's
job
see what his
was
basic
something
job
else.
is. Repossession. Nah, I'm not feeling it right now. Let's just go hit the open plains and see what we find. Take our time. Enjoy each other's company a bit longer. Okay, so let me pull the slideshow back up again. And then let's click forward a little bit while we ride out of town. Now, okay, the graphic I've got up here, let me back up one more time. We were talking earlier about the 1856 election. And the number of people in the country at large that were on board with a candidate who openly said the problem in our country are Irish Catholics and other immigrants. Whoa. I don't want to spook those. I think there are some buffalo right over that rise. Is that a rock or is that a buffalo? I think that's a rock. That's embarrassing. I feel like that's a big part of my time out here is playing the game. Is it a bush or is it a rock or is it an animal? Yep, that's a rock. That's a very big rock. That rock is so big I should remember that rock is there so I don't do this every stinking time I ride out of Blackwater. But I do. Okay, so one of the major things that changed that view of immigrants was the Civil War. And so this picture here is of 5 unidentified soldiers in the 63rd New York Infantry Regiment, and then 1 additional gentleman in civilian dress. Now this particular picture is from the Library of Congress and part of the Lilquenquist collection. I'm sure I butchered that name. I want to give credit where credit is due because that's how I roll. But so what happened is a lot of Irish signed up for the Civil War, and what's interesting with that all by itself is you can almost imagine perhaps Siobhan's father would have enlisted willingly, but not necessarily because he was all in on abolition. In fact, as much as it pains me to admit this, Irish Americans at this time period were not abolitionists because they were so low on the ladder. Many of them found some kind of comfort in the idea of someone below them. And they saw African Americans, both slave and free, as direct competition for work. And remember, these are people who have now come out of a starvation situation and are desperate for work. So I'm not excusing it, I'm just simply framing. So, but they still signed up for the Union Army in droves, partially out of just pure national loyalty. I don't necessarily agree with the cause we're fighting for, but if my country needs me, whatever that country is, I will serve the country. And that's it ultimately led to thousands of men to sign up and march under the Union banner. And that started to shift some of these perceptions, because not only did the Irish fight like they had something to prove, they went off to prove it. And they were given some room to do that. Now, in another episode I want to do with you guys, when we're doing the history, so to speak, the history and hunting episode, I want to get into that. I want to talk about this particular regiment and the brigade it was part of, the Irish regiment, or Irish brigade, as it was referred to, which was made up of units from New York and I want to say Massachusetts, but I might be wrong on that. There were like six over the course of the war that were part of the brigade. And you can see the regimental colors behind them there. They would also have had a brigade flag that they would use to represent the larger body. And that would usually be accompanied with the brigadier general who oversaw it all. So there's that coming events, as it were. So what I've got here is the kind of environment that was something that you would have seen. I believe this is a recreation in a museum. I don't have a citation on it, but you can see that's a cramped space. And despite the fact that they passed laws about safe living, you didn't actually get a lot of improved conditions, because landlords would simply cite an inability to get in compliance with the law on the grounds that there just wasn't physical space to put the people. So kind of a, yes, we know the regulation says we can only fit 6 people in this apartment. Well, they got to live somewhere, so we're going to put 12. And that led to some major issues and disparities throughout. Let's see if there's anything going over this side of the hill. Oh, don't run. I hate it when they run. Pronghorns are fast little buggers. And oh, he got back up. Maybe he'll bleed out on me. And of course, it's foggy. It's like perfect hunting weather, right? Alright, let's see what we got. This one I got one shot. He's probably going to be in pretty good shape. Let's see here. Nope. And it looks like I'm bringing in skins today. Okay, so while we're collecting the skins, let's get back to talking a bit. So again, for Siobhan, this would have been her home. She'd been sharing it with 8, 10 other people, plus her mom, maybe her father as well, maybe siblings. Geez, I could probably do a whole episode on late 19th century contraception. Although spoiler alert, there wasn't much. And we go down that road. And so part of the story I was writing for her is maybe she fled west because something else, when she came of age, turned 13, 14, cued her that she didn't have a lot of great life opportunities. And therefore she was looking for a better opportunity out there somewhere. And again, looking at like the opportunities that were presented to her there just weren't a lot of them. So you run into a lot of those ideas. And maybe I'll do a little more digging into that for a later stream. I'm coming up on 40 minutes. I'm about where I want to be, topic-wise and time-wise. So that's where that's at. So for example, the one thing that we had going in the U.S. from this picture, these are a couple of children working in a mill. And that was really what was happening at this time. Remember, we're deep into the Industrial Revolution, and we're deep into a period where we are rapidly expanding business, and those are horses. Why are they always horses? I'm in desperate need of a couple of good deer, and I'm stumbling across horses. Oh, hey, the moonshine's up. Wonder if we have a buyer. You know, a successful moonshine delivery would make for a nice cap on the evening, don't you think? I'm kind of feeling that. So let's set a waypoint and get headed back towards camp to drop these skins off at least. Where's camp? Camp's way. Okay, we're gonna head back into town because I'm not that far out of town. I'm gonna do this big loop around the north, and I'm gonna land right back here in town at the fast travel point. We're gonna pop back to camp, drop off anything we've got, head up to the moonshine joint, make a delivery. Yeah, make a delivery, and then call it a night. Feels like a good evening to hanging out, don't you think? And okay. All right. So where were we? Oh, life opportunities. Now, I'm not gonna lie. While it's not exactly scholarly work, a lot of my understanding of this period was also informed by the movie Far and Away, which, if you have never seen, is an amazing bit of filmmaking with Tom Cruise before he was completely nuts, and Nicole Kidman, who has always been a very attractive woman. And it presented a very seedy version of the New World for immigrants. So those are other things that were kind of germinating in my brain. So I was doing my research, thinking about a plausible backstory for Siobhan here, and I was reading more and more about these business opportunities. And one thing that was prevalent was recruiters would go to other countries and say, "Tell you what, come with me, sell off your belongings. When we get to America, I'll have a job for you." And that was, many times that was a good deal, especially when you were leaving the famine. The problem was it also often led to people ending up in these situations where they got to America and the job was terrible. Or worse, there wasn't a job. So they get off the boat penniless with like a suitcase of clothes if they were lucky, no prospects, no opportunities, and then they had this person saying, "Well, now, here's the deal. You can live on the street, or you can go do this thing at a much lower wage than we ever promised you." And some of these businesses were savory, some of them were not. You were very much at the mercy of wherever you ended up. Now, for Siobhan here, our young lady on the horse, since we've got her as a first-generation American, her parents would have gone through this, but they would still be facing those same issues. Now, what's interesting is that in 1885, Congress passes the Alien Contract Labor Law, which establishes rules for this. And now, nominally, it was to cut back on taking advantage of immigrants. To say, okay, look, you can't just lie to people about job opportunities. You're not allowed to do that. Now, here's the text of the law. It is unlawful for any person, company, or partnership, corporation to prepay transportation or in any way assist or encourage the importation or migration of any alien or aliens into the United States, yada, yada, yada. Special, express, or implied to perform labor or service of any kind. So in other words, they outlawed the practice of recruiting people for work in other countries. Now, to the one read, this is an amazing bit of pro-immigrant legislation because it's avoiding people being preyed upon who are desperate. It cuts back on the number of example, poor Irish being lied to before they're brought into this country and then dumped in the slums. But a second article I read about it pointed out that this was also a great way to stop immigration in general, because part of how people knew they were job opportunities in America were these recruiters. And so by making it illegal to go recruit in other countries, they were able to really clamp down on immigration then. And so it ended up, to those historians, being read as a very anti-immigrant law. Now, it had exceptions in it, but they were always for very high-end work. So, for example, actors, artists, lecturers, singers, or persons employed strictly as personal and domestic servants. So, a wealthy English American of English descent, could contract to have a lady's maid for his wife brought over. That was perfectly fine. But if he wanted to hire a group to go lay a railroad, well, that don't work anymore. He can't recruit for that. He has to recruit good old American labor for that. And again, I don't want to spend too much time on political history, but you can kind of see how this all pans out. And what I thought was really neat about this is just the two different articles I read while I was researching tonight presented each side of that argument. One presented it as very pro-Ireland and Irish immigration, one very anti. So, we're going out west. Now, I'm not going to play the video clip here while we're doing our thing, partially because I'm not even entirely sure of the legality of playing a YouTube clip in the background of a stream. I have to still look all that up. It's on my to get to list. Let's see what we got here. I am not bringing Crips much. He's not going to be happy with me.
Going to be out of supplies.
A couple of pronghorn hides.
Okay, this will have
a good coyote and a good raven. Yeah, that barely moved the needle. I can show you here. It was run out, and now it's slightly less run out. Anyway, so if you're familiar with Adam Ruins Everything, he did a show on the Wild West, and he makes the case that I'm gonna put y'all on pause for a second. Y'all good for a sec? Talk amongst yourself. Topic is topic would be, what county of Ireland are you from if you had to be from a county in Ireland? Be right back. I appreciate everyone taking a moment there and letting me do a little housekeeping in a literal sense. I gotta do a quick Facebook message here, and then we are back at it. I guess the advantage of having nobody watching live is that nobody's greatly stressed if I have to duck off camera for a moment. It kind of, helps things roll along here. Okay, there's that. Now, where were we? We were talking Adam Ruins Everything. Now, Adam makes this really interesting point where he makes the claim that the West was settled by women who ran houses of prostitution. And he has a very interesting series of theses that he walks through where he details the prominent madams and their businesses, and then goes a step further to make a fairly compelling case for them being the centers of commerce. And I'll link it somewhere attached to this particular episode. So if you're interested, you can follow. But be really honest, if you just do a Google search for, those are all turkeys, for Adam Ruins the Wild West, you'll get a lot of information. And, I'm just going to put the speed on because I don't want to get caught up hunting right now. That's why I get this moonshine delivered and put some money in my pocket. That's not even entirely true. I don't want to just get this moonshine delivered. I want to get level up so I can start making the moonshine that actually sells for a decent amount, because the moonshine I'm moving is barely profitable. And I'm going to have to ride through an outpost to get to said moonshining operation. It looks like. Well, wait a minute. There's the column of smoke. There's a column of smoke right here. And I don't see any people. I'm getting a buzzing from a collectible. And I hear a collectible. I don't see a collectible. And let's head back over here. Take another look around before I just move on, because I'm not really feeling all that in need of doing it right now. If I can find it, I'll snag it. Alright, well, anyway. Get the chat back up just in case anyone's popped in to join us. Okay, there you go. Might have been down on the cliffside somewhere because it faded out really fast. So anyway, Adam makes a really compelling case that it was the establishment of a business that would get women money. And then with that money, they could then convert that into stability. And then they could spend their money to establish a general store. Because the thing about a general store is if you just have laborers who are living paycheck to paycheck and sending their money home to a relations, to a family member or a spouse, they're not going to buy a lot of necessities. They're not going to buy canned peaches. They're not going to buy sacks of flour. They're not going to buy a lot of new clothes. Whereas by bringing in women into a particular form of work, those women will then have money. They will be spending it. And the best way to guarantee that the money stays within the small circle of women there is to have the women actually run the stores. And so there were cases in the West of towns that literally sprang up around a brothel, which I thought was interesting. And I'll let you watch this video. But I also want to point out something. I was doing some digging in True West magazine. They had an article about this. And in particular, you know what I want to do before I start this? Let me go back outside. That's not where I want to go. I want to go back outside. Because I think I still have my varmint rifle equipped. And if I'm delivering moonshine, I do not want my varmint rifle on. I did that, I think, in an earlier stream. I accidentally went into a fight with my varmint rifle, and it was just not fun. And we've already established I'm not exactly good at this game yet. Yeah, I should be good. It's been a whole summer. All right, there we go. Let's grab that repeater. There we go. Okay, let's get back inside. Where was I? Oh, yeah, here we go. Let's see, there's the door. In 1865, a hospital report in Idaho City, Idaho, stated that 1 out of every 7 patients was suffering from venereal disease. Botched abortions and murder rounded out the number of women who died while working as prostitutes. Also includes a comment that they rarely made enough money to retire and often ended their lives by suicide, overdose, or illness. Gonorrhea, syphilis, chlamydia, all ran rampant during this time. So while there is something to be said for there being a legitimate backstory to a character becoming part of that particular trade, there's a lot of evidence that perhaps they might be very resistant to that particular form of employment, especially if they had any forward vision of where things would end up if they were not at the top of that particular totem pole. Now, and again, this is on TrueWestMagazine.com had this particular article, and they actually captioned it with, this is the picture they attached to it, and this was a woman who is famous for having shot a client who had hit her. And perhaps it was the fact that she was like half the size of the client, but she was actually acquitted at trial on the grounds of self-defense, which was absolutely unheard of at the time because, as we know, the Wild West was known for its egalitarian tendencies towards women. But this last slide here, before we start up the moonshine and kind of round out our evening of gaming together and hanging out and talking history, this is what I got when I typed in to Google, what was it like to be a woman in the Wild West? And I'm going to go, I'm not sure how well you can, you know what, I'm going to grab this and do this so you guys can get a good view of what Google handed me. We have Women of the Wild West, History Detectives PBS. Now, this is an article that goes through 6 exemplary women on the West. So Annie Oakley, Calamity Jane, there's a particular madam who was included. Wild Women of the West. And again, another article about women that like threw off social norms and went out and did crazy things. The Explorers podcast, Wild Western Women, Ladies on the Frontier. Now, I didn't listen to the show, but I did do some digging. And again, this is a pulling out the exceptions to the rules. And again, the usual culprits all show up again because they're the ones we point at. And for all of my affection for it, the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum has an article, Not Just a Housewife, The Changing Roles of Women in the West, and you'll never guess what it is. Yeah, it's another article pulling out exceptions to all the rules to go, look, women had a hard life on the frontier, but let's look at these really interesting women who broke the mold and did something different. Now, and I don't want to end the history part of tonight on a rant, because I'm going to rant plenty when I completely botch this moonshine delivery. But I am going to rant for a second that my Google search was not exemplary women on the West. It was, what was it like to be a woman in the Wild West? And when the best sources we have for quick information for curious minds gives us instead these exceptional cases, we lose the ability to study the realities of it. We begin to define what we think of as real as what was truly exceptional, and that diminishes the contributions of the women on the frontier who made it work for themselves, for their families, for their loved ones, for their sisters, for their daughters. It's great that we have these exemplars out there and these women who broke the mold and broke norms and trailblazed. And if I had searched for trailblazing women on the Western frontier, I wouldn't be upset. But I'm just trying to do a little backstory research for this girl right here on camera with you, and what her life might have been like. I don't want her to be the next Annie Oakley. I want her to be a realistic woman living on the frontier, venison steak to venison steak. All right, so that's my rant. That's where we're going to leave Siobhan for now, because that's an hour and a half of my afternoon went into putting these slides together, and this is as far as I got. So, hey, Science Streams, did you catch the rant? Because if you didn't catch it, you want to go back and get, because it was a dang good rant. But we're actually wrapping up the history part of this, and we're going to do a quick moonshine delivery so I can actually get some real gameplay in here. Got the end of it. Yes! Now, this is the one I'm looking forward to doing. I have booked as an upcoming guest a guy who runs a distillery in northern Michigan called Iron Fish. I think we're going to make it work. It's still a little tentative, but I'm really anxious to get him on here to look at this interface and go, yeah, dude, no. Making gin's way harder than this looks like. but we'll see. But here's the way the game lays out. We've got our mash goes into the still. We add some flavor. Then we get our moonshine. And the last part of our job here now is we find somebody who wants to buy it. And look at that. Miss Young has got herself a hankering for some evergreen moonshine. I don't know why, but she wants it. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to take her money.
Good. You have arrived. Bon.
Ooh, I got myself
You
kind of
are,
worked up there.
ready
And I
to
got to save
drive,
something. I'm on another show
yes?
later tonight.
Our clients,
We're going to talk about going back to
are
school
habitués
and all the fun
impatients
stuff that
for
goes
sure.
with that.
We wish to make a good
So-
impression. These customers have shown they have some good taste.
Yeah.
Their palate is simple, of
But it's
course,
only
but given
8:15,
their
so I got
lack
some
of
time still.
culture,
I'll get this
I
stuff
have to
delivered,
admit
go check on the
that
little one
they
who's having a
have
little rough go of
chosen
things.
well. These,
And then probably get an
drugs
earful from
will arrive,
Mrs.
quickly
Noir, who's sitting on the
and
other side of my green
in
screen,
one piece.
who's done nothing but have to sit
Yes.
through my entire show tonight. So there's probably at least an hour and a half of notes I'm going to have to take. And I say that with nothing but affection for her, because she is herself an amazing amateur historian, and I love her dearly. And I appreciate every note she has for me, because again, she's on the other side of the green screen listening to everything I say. Now let's get this moonshine delivered. Now, in the name of history, too, this is not completely inaccurate, because I definitely am not paying my excise taxes on this stuff. And there's a wonderful moonshining song about minding the kettle and the old tin pan and keeping your smoke from rising. And that was how the revenuers would keep track of where there were illicit moonshine operations. They would be able to look for the rising smoke of the still where it wasn't supposed to be. And then, are you kidding me? I just drove through a roadblock that spawned on me. Well, that's just downright bizarre. Okay, now there's some guys that are blocking the road up there, so we gotta get rid of them. Let's hope I can get rid of them without losing too much life along the way and too many bottles of alcohol. Okay, so you don't get up after a belly shot. Still one guy out there. There he is, coming through the tree line. And that's that. I'm not exactly sure that was exactly sporting of me, but I'm not entirely sure I care either. I try not to think too much about those guys. They really were just doing their jobs. But for good or bad, yeah, there was a lot of illicit stuff happening with this. Let's see how I do here. I'm going to the Valentine Saloon. Now, in theory, I'm probably going to bump into one or two more revenue agents trying to catch up with me. Yeah, I know. I feel bad. Now, okay. If we're going to go down that road, now that you've gone down that road, so let's continue down that particular road. These are guys that are living out on the frontier as revenue agents. So they haven't been home for a while. Effectively, their kids have been fatherless for a while. Oh, he's going wide on me. I know there's another guy back there. There he is. Oh, both of them. Yeah, lots of them. Oh, they're shooting the bottles. Ah. Okay, now that one I feel bad about. That's right, shoot me, I'll heal. That's the other reality, too. I will heal. The moonshine won't. think we're good to go now. Oh, geez, I autopiloted over a bridge. That was potentially stupid of me. There's town. All right. Hey, and I've traveled 3.2 kilometers on a moonshine wagon. Go me. Which has unlocked another moonshine recipe. So. And now that you mention it, that's another point of research I'm going to have to do, because I am desperately curious about the actual numbers of people that we see in these movies that get, just blown away. In these gunfights. Because, I mean, the truth is, Hollywood has way more actors, or extras, than any small town has nameless lawmen to throw at the antagonist or protagonist or anti-hero, or however you want to define your terms. Jeez, criminies, they're still coming. All right, let's just get this moonshine in before they reach me. I'm right here. I'm just going to drive this stuff in before they can catch up to me. Yeah, there they go. They had to wave off. They had to wave off. Had to wave off. And we've arrived. How do we do? Moonshine was sold. Feels good there. Put some money in the old pocket. And I got my full $143.37. So that's another thing on my list of things I need to be researching for a future show. I have to finish Siobhan's history, which apparently I'm going to have to get some actual, really good literature to work off, because Google has not been kind to me. Or get an expert, which might be my next thing, is maybe give a call out to University of Michigan or Central Michigan and see if there's a historian on summer break that's willing to indulge me with a little, indulgence to see what happens, and kind of go from there. And just kind of see if I can get some more information as to a good story for Siobhan here. And then I have, again, how many gunfights were there in the Old West? Now that we've thought about the fact that it was probably about, a dozen revenue agents that I took out on the way. All right. Hop down here. Check in with the boss. Let's see. It's at it's 8:20 now. I got an hour until the. Yeah, no kidding. Well, when you stop and think about it, it's not sustainable. I mean, there were people hung for single murders. I mean, you read about that all the time. And we talked about Billy the Kid had something like maybe 8 to his name when they finally caught up with him, allegedly. Which, again, depending on what mythology you follow, he was never actually caught. He was just he escaped and showed up later. But
shine's under par now. Danny Lee ain't cooking with me no more. So why don't you track down one of their operations and add a little something extra to their batch?
Okay, this is probably not going to be as much fun to watch, but let's see if I can pull it off.
Just destroy the lot of it.
Yeah. You have the option here. I can either blow it all up, or I can try to poison it. Now, I kind of like the idea of poisoning it because it really fits in well with that sense of the organized crime aspect of the moonshine operation. So that adds something kind of fun to it all. Another one, too, I'd like to do is get some actual good weapons historians on. Because I know enough about the physics to know that they're getting a lot wrong here. They're taking a lot of liberties. But it'd be kind of neat to actually get a real, honest to gosh, this is how you do it kind of thing to kind of better talk about how the history of these work. In fact, the gun I'm using right now, let me pull it up over here while we see if this loading screen is going to cooperate or not. This is my gun of choice. let's see if I can get a good look at it. Yeah, that's a great picture of it. Let's see, open this in a new tab. And I think we're stuck in the loading screen from Hack. So we might not get to that particular mission because I'm not. By the time I get out of this and get back in, it's going to be too late for me to do much. But this is about where I wanted to end the night. But I wanted to go back to the shack, do a quick mission, and then start my batch of moonshine. So that when I come back into play again, my moonshine's cooking. But this is my sniper rifle of choice, the Remington rolling block, and it's really kind of neat because you've got that. You can see where it opens back, and then the hammer is a separate piece. So they did a great job of modeling the animation that goes with this too. It's a gorgeous firearm if you're into those kinds of things. All right, well, it's 8:25. I've covered my objectives for the evening. I hope you covered yours. This is not just an open play evening where I play and yap, or I've got all my friends on with me and wackiness happens. So I'm gonna use this as the sign that I should wrap up and call it a night. So if you watched any of this live, thank you for coming by. If you're watching this as a video on demand, I hope you enjoyed it. You learned something. If you have questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I think there's comments here. I'm also going to push this to YouTube probably because I think it's kind of a keeper. Upcoming shows include we've got a poker expert coming on for next week to talk about poker game. I've got some fashion experts to talk about 19th century women's fashion. And then I've got, hopefully I can get an actual stiller on to talk about making moonshine. And so lots of great stuff coming up. All right, take it easy. Have a good night. And as always, you stay safe.